Is this an exile or is it a retirement?
Andrew is genuinely like black mold for the royal family. He just won't go away and they can't get him out.
The king tried to smoke him out, essentially, by saying, right, I'm going to cut off your financial support that I give you.
We're relying on his conscience. Does he have one?
I think it is this sort of treacherous circle of Andrew's sort of confected lifestyle and perception of himself that he has in his mind and what the actual reality is. And will he almost fall on his sword in this case? I think so.
This is a complete betrayal by Sarah Ferguson of her daughters, in my mind, from reading through this.
She's been tossed out. And I think
she's vulnerable at the moment, then, isn't she? She could speak out.
I think this is just another failed sort of enterprise from Meghan, but I guess she's trying.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive, where this week the siege of Royal Lodge has ended as Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor begins his exile in Sandringham. But the crisis for the royal family is not over, as Andrew is engulfed in yet more Epstein scandals, and the King's brother is urged to testify to US authorities and could even face a police investigation here in the UK into allegations from a second woman. I'm The Sun's royal editor, Matt Wilkinson, and joining me to discuss all of this and more is The Times assistant editor, Kate Manzi, and news commentator, Samara Gill. Welcome to you both. Kate, I want to start with you. Welcome to the show, by the way.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start with you because, look, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, front page of The Sun, cover of Darkness, out of Royal Lodge, finally into his Sandringham exile. But I remember a couple of years ago, you wrote in a really good feature, and you were talking about, sources were telling you that it was dubbed the siege of Royal Lodge, that there were two options that Andrew faced. He could either be dragged out kicking or screaming, or it could be done amicably. Do you think the palace are happy with this situation that is now gone? And what was it? Was he dragged out kicking and screaming, or did he do it amicably?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this has been going on for such a long time, Matt. I think, it's been over 2 years the king has been trying to get him out of Royal Lodge. Obviously, the headlines over Epstein and Andrew's friendship with Epstein have rumbled on for a long time. And this has all been going on in the background at the start of his new reign. The king realised he wanted to do something about it and decided that it was no longer good optics for him to be in Royal Lodge, playing, as we revealed, a peppercorn rent for 2 decades. So he wanted to get him out. Andrew was not budging, and that's why there were friends close to the king who at the time were describing it to me as the siege of Royal Lodge. There was a real battle going on of wills between the brothers. Andrew's 11 years younger than Charles, and they haven't always had a very friendly relationship, it has to be said, but this really came to the crunch point. Now, the king tried to smoke him out, essentially, by saying, right, I'm going to cut off your financial support that I give you. Now, that was really important to Andrew, not least to fund the lifestyle that he had, but the security bill was huge because, as you'll remember, when he stopped working as a member of the royal family, he lost his police security and had to fund his security himself. So that bill had been picked up by the king. The king said, I'm not going to pay it anymore, and it left Andrew having to find £5 million, an estimated £5 million a year to maintain his life in Royal Lodge. Andrew said, fine, I'll do it, I'll pay my own way. And then we saw more and more revelations, and it came to that crunch point last October when finally Andrew was pushed out kicking and screaming, I think, because not only was he pushed out of his house, but he lost his prince title, he lost his duke title, and it's all been very, very public, very, very messy. At the time, somebody said to me, very close to the palace, said it can be done tidily and with good grace, or it can be thrust upon him, was the quote. And I think it's very fair to say this has all been thrust upon him, but the palace will be thrilled that this battle is finally over.
The siege is over, but we've got a new siege up in Sandringham, possibly. The timing, I think, is quite interesting because, look, won't be any stranger to the fact there are constant, Epstein revelations over the last couple of days. But he snuck out on Monday night, just as the headlines were coming out, we revealed that he was up in Sandringham, just as Thames Valley Police were saying they might assess new allegations against him. What do you make of the timing?
Look, Andrew is genuinely like black mold for the royal family. He just won't go away and they can't get him out. And the timing of him moving, I think, was extremely, so it was on the precipice of all the allegations. I think the timing actually couldn't have been worse because it shows that, the royal family is desperately trying to get him out, trying to get rid of him and trying to win this optics war. But I think that they should have just kept him where he could be because at the moment, it's just another story for us to focus on in a good way because you got the scoop, Matt. Well done. But I think he won't leave them. He just won't. And he hasn't obviously moved into Marsh Farm yet, but he will do. I just don't think it's the last that we'll hear of him. I think he will continue to crop up. And Kate obviously mentions the money. That's going to be another issue. He will have lots of legal bills potentially in the future. How's he going to pay them? Fergie still doesn't have a house. There are many different things that need to be tied up at the moment. So yes, it's the end, but also it's just the start.
Start of another story. Kate, so as Samara pointed out there, temporarily into Wood Farm Cottage, which is almost like it's been described to me as like the royal family's caravan. It's where family, when they come, they stay over temporarily.
It's where Prince Philip went to retire.
His retirement home, and then he'll move into Marsh Farm once the work's been done. Is this an exile or is it a retirement?
Well, it feels very much like an exile, doesn't it? We've seen him in the last few days before he moved house, smiling and waving from his car in Windsor.
He was almost waving goodbye. He was looking happy and cheery, like he was off to, retire in the south of Spain or something.
That's right. It's an interesting way to play it, I suppose. He's been seen riding around in Windsor Park. Now, we will probably still see him riding in Windsor Great Park from time to time. He will go back there from time to time. I gather he's got some of his stuff still there. There's a couple of boxes still to move. That's the kind of lifetimes of stuff that he's acquired there that he's still got to shift. But it does feel very much like an exile. It's taking him away from everything he's known and putting him in the Sandringham estate. But, I think that's right to say that it's not the end of the story.
Well, it's not the end of the story because after the revelations first appeared from the Epstein files, I think Friday into Saturday, and it's an avalanche over the weekend and into this week, our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, formerly head of the Crown Prosecution Service, and it sounded like he was talking in his old job as a prosecutor, suggested, Samara, that anybody, when he's asked about Andrew, but anybody who has information on an ongoing crime should testify or should give evidence and pass on their information, meaning that he's suggesting that Prince Andrew should speak to investigators in the US. Should he?
Well, of course he should.
He promised that even before the interview, I'm pretty sure, just after the Newsnight interview, he did say, Samara, that, even back then, like this is 7 years ago, my maths are terrible, almost 7 years ago, suggesting that, of course, he would tell the investigators what he knows. He still hasn't. Well,
simple question. If he's not guilty, then why doesn't he go and testify? It really is that basic. But clearly, this is just more of an indictment on his character. The fact that he just wouldn't go, take that trip over to the US. We know that he loves taking trips over to the US.
Can't imagine he'll ever go to the US again.
Well, exactly. So I think it is a tale of two men, because Mandelson is being, Peter Mandelson, who was our former ambassador, now disgraced, he obviously will also have to face the law as well, potentially. So I do think they're kind of together in this, and whatever happens to Mandelson may well, or at least try to be put on Andrew as well.
Well, US views, Peter Mandelson was a long-serving politician in the UK who was actually the US ambassador, but lost his job, the UK ambassador to the US, but lost his job because of the Epstein links, but still rumbling on. Mentioning there about what Andrew does testifying-wise, like me, Kate, I assume you've spoken to the palace to ask what their reaction is, and we're being told it's a matter for Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, but also a matter for his conscience. What do you make of that?
That's right. That's the line coming out of the palace that we've both been told, isn't it? I think it's interesting to put the ball in Andrew's court. Well, people close to the king are saying, well, look, the king can't compel him to testify. He doesn't have that, power over him as a private individual, as they always remind us that Andrew is now. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, no longer a prince, no longer a duke, no longer a working member of the family. But they say it's a matter for his conscience. Now, all the way through, Andrew has maintained that he's done the honourable thing. If you remember, when he gave that Newsnight interview to the BBC in 2019, he said it was the honourable thing for him to fly to New York, to meet a convicted paedophile, to break off that friendship with him in person. That was the right thing to do. to. Since then, we've seen that sort of same terminology from Andrew when he said he was no longer going to use his titles last October. He said that he was doing his duty to the king, to the country, to the people. Now, if that's the case, the next part of doing his duty and doing the honourable thing, of course, would be to examine that conscience and agree to testify. I think the pressure is mounting now. You will know as well as I do that it's quite rare for people around the palace to start saying things quite as bold as the fact that he has to examine his conscience. It would be extremely devastating to the king and the royal family if he did go to testify to US Congress, but with the power of the Prime Minister. Last night we had J.D. Vance in the US come out and say that actually it was probably up to Andrew to testify. The pressure's now mounting. Whether he will or not is another matter. You
pointed out there that he's lost his prince and his duke title and that he's an ordinary individual. He's kind of less protected now by the firm in many ways because he's no longer a prince, he's no longer a duke. So if there are authorities wanting to speak to him, there's less protection. You mentioned there about Andrew's conscience, Samara. Yeah. Kate rightly pointed out that he did go to see Epstein when he was a convicted paedophile, said it was an honourable thing to do, claimed that he'd stopped all contact and carried on being, sharing friendly emails to him. We're relying on his conscience. Does he have one? Should we be relying on his own conscience?
No, I mean, these emails completely show that he doesn't have a conscience. He repeatedly met up with Epstein, communicated with him, ingratiated him multiple times after the conviction. He doesn't. And those photos that have come out are disgusting. I mean, this is while he was the special trade envoy. Did he go over on that trip where he's sort of doggedly standing over a woman? People will know because this has been so publicised now. Was that on the taxpayer's dime? Maybe, was that using public money? He doesn't have a conscience. And even, he was always referred to as quite a pompous, self-important individual. I do still think that he completely doesn't think that he's got any sort of... I think he thinks it's the public versus him. I don't think he's really feeling that bad or anything. And that's why I even think them keeping him in comfy, cosy Marsh Farm, which honestly isn't that ramshackle, isn't even a good punishment. And there are rumours to say that he might even go over to the Middle East and set up a life there because he might find the Marsh Farm life a little bit bleak. So conscience, it doesn't exist when it comes to Andrew.
Just before we move on briefly, surely the king is the only person he would listen to. We know this from October when he was finally forced out and given up his titles.
Well, I think we've seen from the long-running siege of Royal Lodge that we discussed, I think he doesn't really listen to the king all that often. If he did listen to the king, I think him and Sarah Ferguson would be happily ensconced in Frogmore Cottage. Yeah. Meghan and Harry's old home, of course, within the nice security zone of Windsor Great Park, having a more comfortable life. But, Andrew is very much his own man and he's done things his own way. And I'm afraid the king is saying it's your bed, you've got to lie in it.
It's up to your conscience, Andrew. Now, we did a poll with our wonderful Royal Exclusive viewers and we asked, as pressure mounts on disgraced former prince following the latest drop of Epstein files, should Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor step forward to cooperate with the US officials on their investigation into Epstein? 78% said yes, Andrew should do the right thing and cooperate fully. 22% said no, he's done enough damage and should stay out of the spotlight. We've got some viewer comments as well. Lou and Alfonso says, Andrew will never do the right thing. He's morally bankrupt and too self-centred. Whereas Radia Ibrahim says, difficult choice. On the one hand, he should stand before a judge. On the other hand, the more he says, the worse the shame and embarrassment of his family, country and monarchy. And that's maybe an interesting point, Kate. If he does testify, that does actually heap more embarrassment on the wider royal family.
Yeah, it would be devastating, wouldn't it, PR-wise, if he actually stood up and said what he knew? Because clearly, from the photograph that you mentioned, he was right at the centre of Epstein's friendship and his circle. He claimed he cut off contact with him in December 2010, but we've seen emails in this latest dossier dump, essentially, from the US Department of Justice, in which he's emailing Epstein just a few weeks later, on Christmas Eve, no less, to offer him a business opportunity in Helmand province in Afghanistan, which he has learned about through his role as UK Special Trade and representative. So I think that just so many questions to be asked. There's also the question that you raised about money. I mean, how would he fund the lawyers for that would be required for that sort of level of US litigation or any potential civil suit? There's a second woman now in the US who we've been told has come forward who has got an accusation against Andrew. She said that she was sent here by Epstein to the UK to have sex with Andrew. Now, if she launches a civil case, then how is he going to fund that? Previously he had the largesse of his mother, the late Queen.
Yeah.
Will his brother Charles be as generous with his funds to help Andrew fight that? It's unclear, but it does seem that now the royal family has this sort of Andrew tax to pay to try to protect the institution's reputation.
You mentioned there Andrew tax. I mean, let's talk about that. He paid, or the Queen, late Queen, we believe, paid millions out to Virginia Giuffre, who came forward very bravely. Gave her name, gave her story, and was paid out by the royal family to stop the case going ahead. But there is this shadow of this next case. So Thames Valley Police, which covers Royal Lodge and Windsor, have said they are assessing reports that the US lawyer Brad Edwards, who's representing this woman, who says that she's talking about at least one woman who was sent by Jeffrey Epstein over to Prince Andrew, and she even had a night with Prince Andrew and a tour of Buckingham Palace. Now, this lawyer has suggested that Andrew was disconnected from his lawyers, and also saying that by taking away his style and his honours, there may not be any money to pay for compensation. There are more women, Samara, coming forward.
There are more women, and the money thing will be a big issue, and also the fact that he continues to deny that he did anything wrong, whereas these emails completely suggest the other way around. He kind of comes off as this sexual fiend who was just looking for a different woman to bed every single sort of week, and it seemed like Sarah Ferguson was almost okay with it or complicit with it because she loved Epstein's money so much. That's what it comes across as when I read the article. So yeah, it's going to be a big issue for him. I think there would actually be riots on the street if it was found out that the king was giving any more money to Andrew or paying any sort of legal bills in regards to any future cases. I don't think he can rely on the king for that. I'm not sure how he'll get the money. Obviously, as I said, we know I genuinely think his only sort of connections in the Middle East might be the only way he could get any money to pay anything, but that's going to be an issue too. And we see that he had problems with Epstein and this feigned friendship with Epstein because he didn't have enough money to basically sustain his lifestyle in the first place. So I think it is this sort of treacherous circle of Andrew's sort of confected lifestyle and perception of himself that he has in his mind and what the actual reality is. And will he almost fall on his sword in this case? I think so.
Well, reality must have hit by now. He's been dispatched up to exile in Sandringham.
As you said, with the photos, he's looking kind of chummy. He's riding around on his horse. He doesn't look too afflicted by it.
We need to move on to, three other people really, not just Sarah Ferguson, but also Beatrice and Eugenie that have been dragged into this. We discussed on the show in the past as to whether they should be infected by what's happening to their parents, and whether the royal family have basically kept their titles and put a kind of given them a warm embrace to stop them being dragged into it. But they've been dragged into it massively with these release of the Epstein files. Sarah Ferguson took Beatrice and Eugenie to see Epstein when they were 19 and 20, and she sent emails about Eugenie going off for a shagging weekend. You begin to question Sarah Ferguson now, Samara, surely.
Yes, you do. And Kate, I feel like you've got some...
No, I was going to jump in there, but by all means, I mean, those emails, having been through the Epstein files myself, there's not all of them yet, but they are staggering. This is a complete betrayal of by Sarah Ferguson of her daughters, in my mind, from reading through this. So let's roll it back. Just a few days after Epstein is released, having pleaded guilty to crimes of soliciting a minor for prostitution, she decides it's a good idea to ask him for plane tickets to go over there. It appears from the emails, we have to say that these emails haven't been verified as genuine, but so far we've no reason to disbelieve them. Sarah Ferguson asks for flights over to see him, talks about her daughters going over to see him. There was a lunch with Epstein. She writes to Epstein, it seems, to say, thank you very much for seeing me and the girls. Your compliment to me in front of my daughters is one of the kindest things anyone's ever done. They were young girls at the time, young women, I should say, and those crude comments, very intimate comments about her daughter Eugenie, who'd been away to see a partner or boyfriend at the time. It's absolutely staggering that, fair enough, a relationship with this very powerful man prior to his conviction, but the fact that it continued. Now, Sarah Ferguson has always said that when she found out, she cut off contact with him. We've heard that story before from Andrew. But then we've seen emails in this latest dossier dump in which Sarah Ferguson actually begs Epstein to get back in touch with her. It seems that he cut her off, not the other way around. So there's all sorts of tales going on here. And in the middle of it all, you've got the two princesses who, you rightly say, have kept their princess titles. They are still House of York, unlike their parents. Sarah's no longer a duchess. Their father's no longer a duke. They were invited, as we saw on Christmas, to spend Christmas with the royal family. And there has been this protective kind of ring of love that's been put around them by the king, who I'm sure feels incredibly sorry for them, and that's certainly what I've been told.
Yeah, no, it's the same here. I mean, there is a concern for them. There is a worry that they could be, and they are. We're seeing it now. There's a lot of sympathy, surely, for Beatrice and Eugenie.
I've got sympathy for them, absolutely. I mean, those emails that Fergie sent were just so sugary and tawdry. You just want to throw up, because it's like, some of the quotes, marry me, this and that. I mean, she really, really had this obsession with Epstein and his money, clearly, and definitely was craving for his attention. But I think also Beatrice and Eugenie represent the privileged young girls in this situation who probably didn't have to deal with the wrath of Epstein and Andrew, because at the heart of it, Andrew and Epstein wanted to basically focus on young, underprivileged, vulnerable girls. I mean, the reason we don't have that many testimonies from women is because a lot of them were Eastern European, French, they didn't speak English, they couldn't communicate properly. So I think it's an interesting juxtaposition to look at the daughters, who I feel very sorry for having been put in that situation, but also the way that they spoke about, and Andrew has spoken about girls their age at the same time. I just don't know how he compartmentalized that in those emails, because he was also, Yeah,
this is a father and a mother of two young women.
Yes.
And then, all this other stuff that was going on.
Well, it shows their disrespect for anyone below their class. These were just basically disposable women for them. At least the victims, it seems, especially for Epstein.
That's the point. Sorry.
No, please.
I was going to say, that's the point as well. We're talking about Andrew trying to do the honourable thing, and he has never, ever really expressed any sympathy for Epstein's victims, or really any true regret for having been friends with him, He's
also never expressed, he's always expressed his innocence, and he's always have to add that, he has never.
Well, it's true to say. He's always denied any allegation of wrongdoing, and the police, Metropolitan Police, have looked at it several times and said they've found no evidence of illegality in the UK and closed the case. I mean, whether that will remain the case if new evidence comes up, well, let's see.
We talk about Andrew having to testify or tell the authorities what he knows. Shouldn't Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. She seems equally as complicit in this, in my opinion. She probably didn't abuse any young women, but who knows? In terms of, she seemed that she was okay with some of the stuff that was going on, looking at the emails. And I think, as we spoke about, Fergie hasn't really even got a place to stay at the moment. She's been tossed out. And I think
she's vulnerable at the moment, then, isn't she? She could speak out. She could go rogue, or she doesn't have anywhere to live. The royal family have kicked her out of Royal Lodge and said, you find yourself private accommodation. She could talk to the authorities. There's no one telling her what to do. There's nobody making there's not palace sources asking her to examine her own conscience. She's free to do whatever she wants. She has nowhere to live.
Well, she's not related by blood to the king either, is she? But she was offered a place to live back at the start of the siege of Royal Lodge, because the king made it quite clear to Andrew and Sarah that they could live together, or he would find provision for her. He didn't want to punish her unnecessarily. I think that story has now changed quite significantly. But you're right. I mean, people forget that actually, if you go back and there's, tiresome that job that we do to go through, but a very important job to go through all the documents. One of the previous dossier releases from the US government was a transcript of an interview with Ghislaine Maxwell, who obviously is now serving 20 years for her part in Epstein's abuse of women. Now, in that, she said that it was Sarah Ferguson who first met Epstein and introduced him to Andrew. Apparently there was a party in the Bahamas, and that's where she met him. And then, so, she really does have a lot of questions to answer, and it's a really good point you raised. Should she be persuaded to testify too? Yeah,
interesting. Well, there's so many documents in this. I mean, is it 10 million? Is it?
It's 3 million pages.
Yeah.
And that had been whittled down by 500 US lawyers who initially had 6 million pages.
Are you getting any more?
Well, they've said that they've fulfilled their mandate now. They were told to release the Epstein files. They believe now the Department of Justice in the US believes that it has fulfilled its duty, if you like. Having said that, it doesn't actually say that they wouldn't in future if they saw something worth disclosing.
It's not going to go away, guys.
And also, there's still so much within there that people are still going through. Still nuggets being pulled out.
Yeah, it's very nice to see even Virginia Giuffre's sort of accounts quite corroborated within this latest drop, because you can almost line them up and then see that she was totally being gaslit at some points. Of course, he still maintains his innocence, Andrew, as we spoke about, but it's putting together the pieces, as you say, and just sort of trying to figure out what exactly happened and who got away with what.
As I say, it's not going away. Another thing that's not going away is Meghan's Instagram page. Now, I don't sign up for alerts for As Ever or Meghan's Instagram page.
Lies.
Honestly, I sometimes pop onto Instagram and Matt Sun Royal, if anyone's put some whimsy
You're
posts
always
up.
on there, doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Help me. So she has launched a Valentine's Day chocolate collection, Samara, and
yes.
It's a collaboration with someone just before Christmas. So what's going on with Meghan and a Valentine's Day chocolate collection?
She's launched some chocolates. They're going for about, I think it's £10, 20, around that. Again,
it's quite cheap for Valentine's Day chocolates, isn't it?
She continues to repackage and package things up. Like, we know that she's got this surplus of jam because she over-ordered when she spoke to Bloomberg and said she was going to expand her business. It turns out there are some reports that say there are fulfillment centres full of these jam jars. Now, she's repackaged some of those and put them also in the Valentine's Day collection with some sort of cheap bow on the top. The chocolates are interesting. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be rushing to Meghan's site to get some chocolates. I mean, knowing how men operate, it's usually a last-minute decision to rush out to a shop, grab a bunch of flowers.
This is now
I think I'm just going from personal experience here, but I just don't think anyone's that organised and calculated enough to go online and buy chocolates. I think this is just another failed sort of enterprise from Meghan, but I guess she's trying.
Kate, you must keep an eye on As Ever and her brand and her sales. I did a story recently saying that they had a vast amount of stock. But that's because, they had a vast amount of jars because they'd sold them. They'd sold so many, and that they'd sold, hundreds of thousands of them. Is As Ever, is this product range that she's got, is that the future that you expected for Harry and Meghan when 6 years ago we saw them leave off to start their new life?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it seems to be a success, all the numbers that we see, but it's not quite what I expected from Meghan to be selling jars of jam, if I'm honest. She was this kind of pioneering, she was this breath of fresh air in the palace, this pioneering kind of women's rights campaigner even from a young age. And I'm not saying that that's at odds with selling jam. Of course, the two can go hand in hand. But I'm not sure I saw that for her. I think her passion is acting, and I think it would be really interesting to see her return to that, because in some role or other. And I think that's probably where, her strong suit is. rather than in a kind of a homemaker. And I noticed that Netflix doesn't seem to be announcing any new series of her programmes anytime soon, and perhaps seeing her in, acting again would be interesting to see. But my goodness, they must be looking at what's going on with Andrew back here and thinking, well, we never did anything wrong.
But also keep it quiet right now as well.
She is going to be on the Amazon lot this year. She's going to be doing a wedding. I think it's called The Wedding Date or something. It's kind of like a C-grade film looking at the cast. She's trying to shift away from what I would call a fall from grace, which is selling chocolates and jam. When you're right, she had a promising future. She was meant to be a women's rights activist, and all she does is sort of stay in the kitchen and cook things, which I just think is a little bit antithetical to her original plan. So, yeah, maybe we will see her on the screens. I just wonder how long it's going to be for, what that movie's going to look like. I'll be watching it. That's for sure.
Okay, let's return a little bit closer to home. I was in Wales this week, Kate, with the Princess of Wales. She's actually travelled to literally the four corners of the UK. She was up in Scotland. We were both up in Scotland a couple of weeks ago, where she also went to a woolen mill there. She's been to Kent, and now she's been to Wales. She is travelling the country, promoting the best of British, and talking about craftsmanship, creativity, and the skills of local manufacturers. She's a wonderfully dressed woman, very glamorous, very popular, very famous. Is she the right person for this job?
I think she's absolutely the right person to promote British textiles, don't you? I think she always looks fantastic. She knows her stuff. That's what the palace will say will be, that she's interested in artisan crafts, a bit like her father-in-law, the king.
She looks like she's having fun as well.
She does look like she's having fun. We saw her, kind of making a pair of jeans for William at an event. I think she's got skills as well. She's always talking about the children being quite crafty, and she quite likes getting involved with that. But yeah, I mean, definitely it's a kind of passion for fashion, isn't it, with the Princess of Wales? And she does it really very well. She always looks very elegant, and I think it's nice that she has embraced this role, because there has been a bit of kind of push me, pull you over stories about, how much is the Princess of Wales going to lean into fashion? But actually, she really has. And while she doesn't want to just be seen as a clothes horse, she sees the power in her brand, if you like, that she can promote British girls. We're interestingly going to see Kate and William's royal warrants as well. The King has now given them a chance to issue royal warrants, and that's, a special kind of label that the company gets to put on their, the front of their door, on all their products, on their logo, to say that they supply the royal household. So when we see those, we'll really get to find out what's in her shopping basket and see which labels she prefers, which brands of skin cream she uses, and I think that will be really fascinating.
Sales will rocket of everything.
Won't they just? It's been called the Kate effect for a reason.
Interestingly, did you know that these jeans, she went to Hewitt in Wales, apparently, I'm led to believe that Meghan wore these jeans in Wales a couple of years ago when she was here, and there was a Meghan effect because these style of jeans went incredibly, the sales went through the roof. But, that's just an aside. Kate, can I get your view on something? The Great Kate debate, because whenever guests call the Princess of Wales Kate on this show, we always get picked up by our viewers because she's Catherine or she's Princess of Wales. As a Kate, are you a Catherine or a Kate?
I'm afraid I'm just a plain old Kate. So I don't have the Sunday best option. But the reason why I call her Kate was because when she was first introduced to us as royal correspondents, and I've been covering the beat for over 20 odd years now. Gosh, that makes me sound old. But she was first introduced to us as Kate, as Kate Middleton. And all her friends from university, and some of my friends who went to university and knew her at the time, all called her Kate. Look back to the people who say you shouldn't call her Kate. Just go on YouTube and type in Tom Bradby engagement interview, Prince William, Kate Middleton. And you'll see all the way through, William calls her Kate. And it was only later on, as they got a bit older, they decided to be called. She decided to start calling herself Catherine, which I think is absolutely her right, and that's fine. And she will be Queen Catherine one day, not Queen Kate. But that's why I still call her Kate, because that's how I was first introduced to her and sort of how she sticks in my mind.
We try to call her Catherine as much as possible because I think that's what she kind of wants to now. But for us,
Well, I think you probably should call, to some extent, you probably should call people what they want to be called.
Yeah, but Kate is very short and it fits in the headlines in the newspaper.
And people still very close to her still do call her Kate, so it's not that she hates it.
No, she doesn't.
She's still kind of girl next door in the best way. Like, she still gives off a Kate, She's not quite... I think when she becomes queen and everything, that will change. But I think that's her appeal. It's like Kate and Wills. Like, they're the kind of couple next door that you just want to be friends with. And I think that's what will lead them into the future and almost modernise the monarchy in that type of way. Because they're a little bit more relatable than probably or at least from an outside perspective.
Really good point. Good to touch on a great Kate debate. Thank you. And finally, just got our quick-fire questions. So as Valentine's Day is approaching, what member of the royal family would you love to go on a Valentine's or Galentine's?
Is Galentine's like gal pals?
I believe so. Have you never heard of Galentine before?
Yes.
No.
Okay, Samara, what's a Galentine or a Valentine?
It's like if you're single or you prefer your girlfriends over your male friend or whoever you're dating. With. So, yeah, I would do Princess Anne. I think she's a total girl's girl, and I'd love to do Galentine's with her. Maybe just get out on the horses, just have a good time, sip a bit of champagne. Sounds good to me.
Mine would be Queen Camilla, because I just think we would have so much fun. I think she, her sense of humour, her sense of just going with the flow is really refreshing. She's got a twinkle in her eye. Maybe we'd have a nice dinner. We'd definitely share a nice bottle of red wine. Hopefully her son, Tom Parker Bowles, who's an absolute hoot and a lovely writer, would come along for too. And yeah, just enjoy ourselves. That's what I'd do.
Excellent.
Sorry to all the boys and men in the royal family. Yeah. No, you haven't chosen.
Hearts breaking everywhere now, Kate. This is a tricky one. We concentrate on the British royal family, but which European royal family would you love to go for a state dinner with?
The Dutch.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, King Willem and Queen Maxima. Yeah, I just think they always look so jolly. They always look like they're having a nice time. They just seem so down to earth. They've recently had an inward state visit from Finland, and you look at the pictures of the state banquet, and they're all having a great time, like laughing. It's relaxed. I just think it'd be really good fun. Yeah.
Yeah, you stole mine. I actually...
Sorry.
No, I completely agree. The Dutch are so much fun. There was one member from the Dutch royal family when I was in Australia at this dinner that I was at, and I was just having a great time, like laughing with him. We were just enjoying ourselves, and I was like, who is this guy? He's so great and so like down to earth and relatable. And then I found out after that he was the brother of the prince. And I was like, right, okay, that's great. So it's just, they're so relatable, you don't even realise that they're royal.
The Queen of Denmark met her boyfriend, who was the then Prince of Denmark, who's now the King of Denmark, in a bar in Australia. So
yes, yeah, exactly. Gotta love Mary.
And finally, with the excess of the Brits at the Grammys, which Grammy winner would you love to see perform at a royal birthday party? I'm testing your knowledge on Grammy.
Well, yeah, my pop knowledge. I mean, Olivia Dean probably is the most likely, isn't she? Because we were both there at Westminster Abbey just before Christmas for the Princess of Wales's carol service, where she performed, and she has the voice of an angel. I think she'd be great at any royal birthday party. Well, there's a royal birthday coming up for Prince Andrew in a couple of weeks, but perhaps not such a party.
I'd say Adele. I think she's like a British success story, and she's like really worked her way up from the bottom, and I think she'd be great, and I think everyone in the royal family would enjoy that.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Okay, thanks for coming on. Your first show here. I'd love to have you back. But you also, at the Times, you've also got a podcast. If anyone's interested in, how do they find it?
Yes, you can find us on YouTube or by searching The Royals with Kate and Roya, and we do one every week. So yeah, just take your pick.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave your comments below as usual, and remember to subscribe to us here on our new Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for the latest royal news. We'll see you next week.